This is Alex, and welcome to Barely Braided, where we're taking a deep, deep dive into foster care, adoption, and all things parenting, even the sticky stuff. Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of Barely Braided. I am your host, Alex Ellis, and today is a very special day because I have my first official guest who is not my husband. So I am really, really excited today. I would like to give a nice big warm welcome to Barbara. Hi.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I'm a little nervous with a real guest because, like, in front of my husband, I can kind of say anything, and I don't want to make a fool of myself in front of you. So if I do, apologies in advance.
Oh, you're fine.
Okay, cool. Well, so what I know about Barbara, we met online. Online in a Facebook group, like a foster parent Facebook group. And I don't even remember which post it was that we started talking. Do you remember what it was about?
It was actually a Nashville girls group. I think that's the official title.
That's right.
And I was just asking about foster parenting and how long the process took, and you reached out to me.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Because I feel like when you're in a group that's not about foster care or adoption and you see somebody posting about foster care and adoption, like I want to jump in and be like, oh, hi, hello, how are you? Nice to meet you. So we've been messaging back and forth about that. And that's kind of how we got to know each other. And she told me like a little bit about her story, which I thought would be really cool to have on the podcast. So that is our plan for today. But before we get into that, I do want to share that today's episode is brought to you from the Russell Hotel. The Russell is a historic East Nashville church transformed into a beautiful boutique hotel. The Russell's mission is to give back to the Nashville community through their Rooms for Rooms program, donating a portion of funds from your stay to local organizations that provide a safe haven for those in need here locally. And I am really excited to be podcasting here from the Russell. First of all, because they have a really cool podcast room, but it's just a really beautiful space in general.
It is. I like it a lot. I love the stained glass window.
Yeah, they're really cool. It has beautiful stained glass windows because it used to be a church, and it's just a really beautiful place. So if you are in need of lodging in Nashville, plan to make a visit www.russellnashville.com to book your experience. So, should we jump into it?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So I guess I am just interested to know your whole story from start to finish, if you're open to sharing.
Okay.
So let's start with the fact that you were an adopted child. Do you prefer were an adopted child, are an adopted child?
Once you become adopted, you're always adopted.
Okay, so you are an adopted adult.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit about that. How did it start? What were your thoughts? What was your experience like?
Okay, well, I was born in Morgantown, West Virginia. I was born in the old University Hospital. Those my age would barely remember it if you're from around Morgantown. And my mom and dad, my biological parents, they were truck drivers. And I was about 13 months old, and my biological father decided that I didn't need to be on a truck anymore. So he dropped me off at my grandmother and great-grandmother's house. And I was adopted by my grandmother at 6 years old because my great-grandmother tried, but she was too old. She was 82 when I was born. She was born in 1900, so she was around for a while.
Okay.
But she raised me. I was raised by both of them. My grandmother primarily worked outside of the home. My great-grandmother, she taught me everything. I was a super smart child. And then my grandmother got cancer when I was 16 and passed away.
Oh, my goodness.
And growing up, the hardest thing was listening to them talk about my biological parents and how they knew them and I didn't. And they would say terrible things about them, but I'm like, can they really be that bad? And then I was taken in by a neighbor down the road from where we used to live. I might have known her my entire life. I call her mom.
Can I stop you and ask questions as you go?
Yes.
Okay, cool, because I'm so curious, but I don't want to be rude. So just so I'm clear, were you living your first year of life with your biological parents
Yes.
on the road?
Yes.
Okay. I'm assuming you probably don't remember anything from them.
No.
Okay. And then for the first 6 years, you were living with your grandparents, but you hadn't been officially adopted yet. Do you remember your adoption day at all?
I remember that it was in September, and it was in 1988.
Okay.
I have my birth certificate list the official date. I think it's September 12th.
Okay. And so at that time, do you remember feeling like, oh, yes, I'm excited about like being officially adopted, or did you even know what that meant, or did you even care?
It didn't really affect me, honestly. I mean, I barely remember that day. I remember the judge asked me to sit on his lap, and I remember he asked, is this something that you want? And, I was 6 years old and don't really know much. And I was like, sure, yeah.
Sure, why not? Adoption, whatever.
And, nothing really changed once I become adopted because, these two people were the only people that I had known my entire life.
Okay.
So adoption didn't really mean anything to me, but I know legally it meant a lot to them.
Okay. So then your grandmother came down with cancer, and while she was still living, you went with a neighbor. Is that how that worked?
Well, yes and no. Before she went into the hospital, because her cancer was too far gone, she couldn't do chemo. So her only option was surgery. And before she went into surgery, she asked them, her name is Betty and her husband Jim, and asked, hey, if something was to happen to me, would you take her in? I had an aunt and uncle that were not very good people at all. And they treated my grandmother, I should say my great-grandmother, pretty bad. And my grandmother kind of foresaw what was going to happen. So she said yes. She knew about the situation.
Okay. At that point, did you have siblings, or did you know of any siblings at all?
I knew I had siblings. I knew I had two much older brothers, and I knew I had a brother very close to my age, and then I had a younger brother. But my grandma and my great-grandma, they didn't know if my younger brother had survived because he had a lot of lung problems.
Oh, gosh.
So I knew about them, and I knew that there was a possibility I had a sister, but that was never confirmed.
Okay, and so these siblings would have been full biological?
Yes.
And you had no idea, like, where they were or how to contact them? I mean,
No.
I guess you were probably, too young to contact them if you wanted to.
Right.
Okay, so at this point, you're living with the neighbor. That's Betty, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so tell me about that.
I had known her my entire life, so, moving in with her wasn't a real big deal because I spent plenty of nights at her house. She had watched me plenty of times before I was a teenager. And she had raised two children herself. So I didn't really think anything of it. I thought, okay, well, I'm just moving on from this.
How old were you at that point? You said 6?
16.
Oh, okay. So you spent from 6 to 16 with your grandparents who had adopted you.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And so at 16, then you moved into their house. I feel like that's a very tough age, especially for girls.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we had her go around several times.
Did you really?
Yeah, I remember I was much older, but I called her one day because I was watching a teenager, and I said, I am so sorry for what I did when I was a teenager.
Oh, my goodness. I need to say the same to my mom. Yeah. Okay. So do you still stay in contact with them, or what's your relationship with them at this point?
Oh, yeah. We contact each other at least weekly.
Okay. Well, that's cool. I really like that story. Do you have any other thoughts as far as adoption, or do you remember any of the feelings you had at the time, or anything else that you want to add?
Growing up, I always wondered what my biological parents were like and what they looked like. My grandparents had always told me, hey, you look just like your dad. You walk, talk, act like him. But I never knew him. I didn't even have a picture. And so growing up, I would keep thinking, man, it'd be nice to see them. It would be really nice to get to know who they are. And it was much later before I found them.
So you did find them?
Yes.
How did that work? How did that happen?
Funny story. I used to do a lot of computer IT work. And
oh, so you're an internet stalker.
Yeah, pretty much. And I kept getting these emails from mylife.com, and I kept getting them over and over and over and over again saying, hey, pay us money and somebody's trying to contact you. We'll let you see it. And I was like, oh, whatever. It's just a scam. But then like my intuition told me, hey, you need to do this. And it was only $15, and I put it on like one of those prepaid cards, so it wasn't going to affect me. And here was my biological father trying to contact me. He'd been trying to contact me for 2 years.
How old were you at that point?
I was 29.
Oh my God. So he was trying to contact you through My Life or through another source that was like connected to My Life?
No, through mylife.com.
Oh my goodness. What did he say?
He's just, hey, my name's James Kent, who's, that's my biological father, and I think I'm your biological father. Will you please contact me? I have so much to talk to you about. And like, I'm like, really? Is this really happening?
Yeah.
I'm almost 30 years old. Are you kidding me? So I'm better researcher than the FBI. I found out where he lived, and I got his phone number, and I called him and I said, hey, is this James Kent? And he's like, yeah, who's this? And I said, this is Barbara. I think I'm your daughter. And then he asked me like a bunch of questions to confirm everything. And I said, yeah, your adopted mother is Rachel. And he's like, yep, I'm your dad. I was like, oh, okay. Well, how are you?
Just that nonchalant. Well, how are you? Kind of like we started our conversation. Right. Oh my goodness. So was he living in the area or then
No,
what?
He actually lives in Pensacola.
Okay.
And it was, I don't know, probably about 6 months later, I finally met him in person. We talked on the phone quite a bit.
Oh my goodness. So when you met, how did that go? Did you meet in public? Did you go to his, like what happened?
Well, my husband was with me.
Okay, good.
Yeah. And whenever like he showed me like one of his pictures, after everything had happened with my grandmother, I did find a picture of him. He was about my age at the time, and it was a picture of me and him together.
Wow.
And it was unmistakable that it was me. I knew what I looked like.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow. And then like he showed me, he sent me a picture of what he currently looked like. I was like, are you kidding me? It is him. Oh my God. And so I wasn't really scared to meet him. I had my husband with me anyways. We made a weekend trip out of it.
Wow, that is crazy. Okay, so tell me about the first time that you like actually physically met.
It's very strange because, people who were raised by their biological parents, they've always had that connection. And growing up, I never had that connection. But whenever I met him, I'm like, wow, this person shares half of my DNA.
Yeah.
Half of my DNA comes from him. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'd imagine the only thing I can compare it to, if you're walking down the street and you lay your eyes on somebody that you've never seen before, that's a complete stranger. Obviously you're probably not going to have that feeling like, oh, I'm connected to this person, or this person is like me, or this person is a family member. Did you have a different feeling like in your heart or in your body when you like first laid eyes on him?
It kind of made sense. It was just the strangest thing. Even my husband said it on the way home. He was like, I now get why you're like that, because you act so much like him. I said, well, I was told that my entire life growing up. And, now to finally meet that person that they say I look like, I talk, I walk, I do everything like, it was very, very surreal.
I bet. So what's your relationship with him like now?
It's good. I mean, it's not like your typical father-daughter relationship, of course. But we stay in contact quite frequently. We do. I haven't seen him in a while. The past year has been pretty hard for us. So we now got a new car. So definitely.
All right. Well,
road trips to Pensacola.
That is, a good place to take a road trip to. That is such a cool story. So did you get any further information on your biological mother?
I actually met her about a year and a half later.
Oh, did he connect you to her?
Sorta, because on mylife.com, it's an amazing website, and that's just a free plug for them. Because once you plug in somebody's name, it'll tell you people that could be associated with that person. And I remember keep seeing, now that I know my biological mother's name, and finally I was down there one weekend and I said, hey, who is Mary Starks? And he's like, oh, that's your, had said a few choice words, mother. And I said, oh. And then I found my 2 half brothers. And then I said, are you sure this is her? He's like, yeah, that's her.
So I'm assuming they're no longer together.
No, they were only married for like 9 years and then they divorced.
Okay. And so do you remain in contact with her then?
No, I haven't spoken to her in at least 2 years.
Okay. Is there a reason for it or did you just kind of drift apart?
She is not a nice person.
Okay. Well,
Not a nice person at all.
enough. Yeah. Yeah. You don't need that in your life. That is such a cool story. Like, it's amazing the different roller coasters of emotion that, like, foster care, adoption, all of it. There's always a good story. And I mean, I'm really glad that you got to meet your dad, because I feel like coming from somebody with zero experience, or, you know, I haven't been in that situation at all, it feels like there's a gap closed that you've met them.
It is. There definitely is. I mean, I had like the unique situation of where I didn't know my biological parents. You know, you see a lot of people say, well, I hate my dad, I hate my mom. And, you know, it could be for some very trivial stuff. It could be for some major stuff. And I actually had the privilege of meeting them after I became an adult.
Yeah.
And making that decision for myself as, you know, a well-thinking, well-thought-out process. Hey, this is how this person is. I don't like them. There's something, you know, there's just something off about them. And that's the way it was with my biological mother.
Wow.
Like, we just didn't even connect. And she made excuses after excuses. The one thing that really impressed me with my biological father was that he apologized.
Wow.
And he to this day, I mean, it's been close to 10 years since I've met him, and he still apologizes to me.
Wow.
And my biological mother, she didn't once apologize.
Really?
Yeah, and she raised my 2 full-blooded brothers.
Have you met them?
Yes.
Do you stay in contact with them?
I try to. We all have our lives.
Yeah.
They're all busy.
Do any of your biological family members live around here now to where you would like run into them at the Trader Joe's or something?
I wish. I wish. I've been trying to get my baby brother to move here. I was like, Nashville would be so awesome for you. You should come here. And he's like, well, I might. I have a house.
Well, at the end of the day, Nashville is a fun place to live. It really is. Cool. Well, that is a crazy story, and I'm so glad that you shared it because it's absolutely amazing. Let's talk about like your husband. How did you meet your husband?
Actually, when I moved here, I'm from Morgantown, West Virginia, and the opioid crisis is pretty bad, especially in West Virginia. And I remember one day I woke up and I said, if I don't get out of this town, I'm going to get into something that I shouldn't. Mm-hmm. So I decided to sell everything I own and move to Nashville. I knew one person here I went to high school with. And I remember I talked to him on the phone, and being up north and talking to somebody that's down here, they sound very hick, very redneck. And I said, oh my God, you sound like a redneck. And he was like, no, I sound fine. You sound weird.
It's like the different iterations of the Southern accent.
Right.
That's funny. I love your accent. I think it's so cool.
Oh, thank you.
I wish I had like a thick Southern accent. I've been trying for the last 10 years that I've lived here, and I just can't get there.
It'll hit you one day. I remember, I forget, I was talking to somebody and I said y'all, and I was like, oh no.
Is that not a West Virginia thing, saying y'all?
No. See, where I'm from, Morgantown, it's about, I want to say about 20 to 30 minutes south of the Mason-Dixon line. Like, I lived an hour and a half south of Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So, like, everybody says, oh, you're a Southerner. No, I'm not. I was raised by Southern women, but no, I'm a Northerner. I'm a Yankee. It's okay.
Oh, that's funny. I had a conversation with my mom yesterday. She's trying to get me to move to the Black Hills of South Dakota. I grew up in South Dakota, and she lives out there and wants me to move there and bring, like, my son there and everything, and she wants to be around him more often, which is really cool. But I told her that I wanted to wait a little bit because I wanted him to learn how to start talking here. So he got a little Southern accent because I think it would just be so cute. And she was like, maybe not. But the alternative is it's saying like, oh yeah, like the Minnesota sort of thing that they all have. And I'm like, that's not quite as cute.
Right.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. The one thing I had to learn when I first moved down here was to talk slower, because I was so used to talking super fast. And everybody's like, what did you just say? And so, yeah, I had to slow down everything. And I want to say I had to be here a good, like, gosh, I've been here. Let's see, I moved here in 2002, so almost 18 years. And I probably didn't get a Southern accent until like the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
I hung on to that thing. I just hung on to it as much as I could, and it just happened. And you'll be like, y'all. You'll say y'all, all y'alls.
Oh, I'm there. I'm in the y'all stage.
It's coming.
For sure.
You're going to get the Southern accent.
I just need the drawl. I'm working on the drawl. Maybe there's like a Rosetta Stone for that or something.
Right.
Okay, so I love a good love story. Can you tell me about how you met your husband?
Yeah, I'd actually talked to him on the phone before I moved here. And I remember telling him, you sound so Southern, redneck. And he just laughed. He said, you sound weird. And then I moved here on a bus. And I literally sold everything I owned and moved here. And he picked me up at the bus stop.
Oh,
Literally
my
the
goodness.
old Greyhound station.
Were you scared?
I was a little intimidated because of the area.
Yeah.
Because it was a really bad part of Nashville.
Was it?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I remember, and we stopped on the way to her house, and we stopped and got some beer, and he looks so young. He does. He looks younger than me. And I remember asking my friend, I said, is he even old enough to drive, let alone buy beer?
How old was he at the time?
26.
Okay.
Yeah, he looked barely like 14, 15 years old.
A baby face.
Yeah. Now, to this day, he's 43, and he still looks, gosh, I would say probably maybe late 20s, early 30s.
You're both going to get like into your elderly years and people are going to be like still carding him and
Right.
stuff. That's like my dream.
We still get carded for alcohol.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's just the craziest thing. I'm like, I'm like 38, right?
I love that. It makes me feel so good when I like go to buy alcohol or something and they card me. And I mean, I'm 32, so I feel really good when they do it, to the point where there's like a liquor store that I'll go in occasionally and the guy has stopped carding me because I'm not a regular there by any means, but like I've been in there several times, and when I go in I try to be friendly and talk to them, and he stopped carding me because of that, and I force him to card me every time. Well, that's cool. So he has a baby face, and then you decided that you wanted to get married.
Yes, we've actually been married twice to each other.
What?
Yes. We were young and stupid, and we fought over the stupidest stuff. After we got divorced the first time, we went through some pretty terrible stuff with a serious relationship, and he called me one day and we just started talking again. And then we moved in together, and then it was probably about a year later. Yeah, he asked me to marry him, and 6 months later we got married.
Oh my goodness. So how long were you married the first time?
Like a year and a half.
Okay. And then you got divorced. And how long were you divorced?
I would say probably about 2-3 years.
Okay. So like a decent chunk of time. Mm-hmm. And then were you like seeing other people and stuff, or?
We had both just broken up with, who we were dating.
Okay. So you both saw other people during that.
Oh, yeah.
During that time. And then he just calls you out of the blue?
Yeah, I had emailed him about something. I needed a piece of information from him. And I said, if you need to call me, here's my number. And I didn't think that he would call me like months later. And he called me, and yeah, we started talking. And I was like, oh, well, this is a little weird.
That is so cute. So how long have you been married then the second time?
11 years.
When do you celebrate your anniversary?
The second time we got married.
Okay.
We usually try to do something on our first anniversary.
Yeah.
But the second one is when we actually celebrate.
Okay, so I'm hoping that your two wedding dates were different dates of the year, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, you should just celebrate twice every year.
Right. Yeah, we usually, we don't get each other any kind of anniversary presents. One year we went to Gatlinburg where we got married the first time. Yeah, we just try to do something, but it's not like a huge celebration.
That is really cute. I love that. You're full of surprises. Okay. So then at what point did you decide that you wanted to like have children or bring children into your life?
Well, my husband actually has a medical condition where having children is almost impossible. Well, at least that's what the doctor told him.
Okay. Are you comfortable explaining?
Oh, yeah. He has something called Kallmann syndrome.
Okay.
He was born with it. It's a genetic condition, but his pituitary gland doesn't produce the right hormones.
Okay.
And he had been on hormone replacement therapy for a long time, and the doctor always told him, you'll never be able to have kids. And then at 37 years old, I was 36 when I found out. I was like, wait a second, my monthly friend hasn't came yet.
Oh my goodness.
Why am I feeling so tired all the time? And it just didn't even hit me until it was like 3 weeks after, I was supposed to start. And I was like, this isn't right. But I mean, again, like I had problems myself. I had a lot of female problems.
Yeah.
And skipping periods, didn't even think about it, but something just told me different. And I took a pregnancy test, and lo and behold, I was pregnant.
When you took a pregnancy test, did you go buy it with him, or did you buy it alone, or did you take the test like while he was right there?
I had an old one at the house because, over the years I had taken a couple.
Yeah.
But they were always negative, and it came back positive, and I was like, well, I'm at the age I could be going through menopause. This could be a false positive. It could be an old test. And so I went and got 3 more.
Oh my goodness. And were they all positive?
Yes.
Oh,
and I took them at
goodness.
different times, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I am pregnant.
Well, okay, so before we dive into that, does your husband's condition affect other areas of his life other than fertility?
Well, hormones play an important role in your life. Whether you're male or female, the balance of hormones is very touchy. And if he doesn't take his hormone replacement therapy, he develops headaches, his muscle mass goes down. And all the other things that you would think would go along with a testosterone deficiency.
Okay. So you find out you're pregnant. How did you tell him?
I remember I went to the doctor. I didn't even tell him I was going to the doctor. I just went to the doctor, and it was confirmed, and I had to go for an ultrasound the next day to make sure everything was okay. And I remember standing in the kitchen. I was getting ready to cook dinner, and he was washing dishes, and I said, I've got something to tell you. And he's like, well, okay. I said, I'm pregnant.
While he's washing dishes?
Yeah.
Do you have glass dishes?
No, thank goodness.
Oh, my goodness.
And he was like, are you sure? I said, yeah. The doctor confirmed it today. You went to the doctor.
Oh, he was not happy, was he?
Yeah. So I went for the ultrasound the next day, and it was confirmed.
Oh, my goodness. So what were his thoughts about this?
He was thinking, this can't be happening. This can't be happening. I mean, we had both accepted the fact that we would never have kids.
Yeah. Did he start to become excited after time?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Well, cool. Okay. So how long ago was that?
That was in January of last year.
Okay. So that was fairly recently. Mm-hmm. All right. And then you progressed along in your pregnancy. What happened?
Everything was fine. I was perfectly healthy. I had no issues. I didn't have preeclampsia, no high blood pressure, no gestational diabetes. We were both perfectly fine. She was measuring what she was supposed to. And at 34 weeks, I went in for a regular doctor's appointment. That was at the start. That's when you go twice a week, is at 34 weeks typically.
Okay.
And because of my age, I had to do ultrasounds each and every time I went to the doctor at that point, and they couldn't find a heartbeat.
Was he with you in the room at that time?
No. He
wasn't? I can't imagine how hard that would be. I'm so sorry.
It was pretty unbelievable because I even told the doctor, I said, you need to do another one. There's something wrong. There has to be something wrong with your machine. Your technician did something wrong. You need to do this again. And she did it herself. And she said, I'm sorry, but wow. It just had happened because that was on a Monday. At Sunday night at 10:30 at night, I felt her kicking me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that quick. And that was at 8 o'clock on Monday morning.
Do they have any idea like what could have caused this or what happened?
At first, she thought it was the cord wrapped around her neck, which is a pretty common complication in stillbirth, but she didn't feel comfortable with that. So at my normal yearly pap smear female exam, she went ahead and drew blood from me. And she said, I don't feel like that's the reason. There has to be something else. So she took 12 vials of blood from me and found all kinds of issues.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So the issues that she found were like maybe medical reasons that could have contributed,
yes.
You think?
Yes. I have 4 blood clotting disorders.
4?
Yes, 4.
Oh my goodness.
One is called APS. I can't think of the name. It's the other nickname for it is called sticky blood syndrome.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
And it's just where my blood clots pretty easily. And I had issues with blood clotting in the past whenever I tried to give blood, and I would only be able to give a half a pint because my blood clotted.
Oh.
And nobody had ever mentioned to me, hey, maybe you should go get that checked out.
Right.
I have another one called anticardiolipin syndrome and antibodies. And what that does is it causes heart disease in young people.
That's scary.
And then the other 2 are gene mutations. One's called a PAI gene mutation. That's relatively fairly new and they don't know a whole lot about it.
Okay.
But they do know it's related to blood clotting. And I have a double 4G gene mutation.
Oh my goodness. That's a lot to remember.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I've had to explain to like 4 different doctors.
Yeah. Understandable. Do you have a doctor that you like see consistently that you like and you kind of jive with?
I'm going through the process. Like I just found out about this in October of last year. So getting in to see a rheumatologist is very hard because they're so booked. We just don't have enough, I don't think. I saw one. I didn't really like that one very much. So I go for a second opinion on Monday.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have a positive ANA, which means that I have the antibodies in my blood for an autoimmune disease.
What does that mean?
The APS is technically considered an autoimmune disease. An autoimmune disease is when your body thinks its own cells are bad and your immune system attacks your own body.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
So I feel like there are lots and lots of different blood clotting disorders out there. And I had no idea, especially before talking to you. Similarly, I was diagnosed with what's called factor V Leiden, which is a gene mutation as well. And I don't know that it's incredibly serious, but I did develop a blood clot at one time. It was like in my calf or kind of behind my knee. And it was right after I had flown on an airplane. And when I got home and I got all settled in, funny enough, it was the one time in my life that I didn't have health insurance because I had just started working at BMI and they have like a 90-day probationary period before your health insurance kicks in. Oh, and I also forgot to mention I had just recently started a new type of birth control, which was the NuvaRing. And it was the first like hormonal birth control that I had ever been on. And I developed this blood clot. At first, I thought it was an injury, but I couldn't remember how I had been injured. I couldn't remember injuring myself at all. And my leg was just like hurting and it was swelling and it got so bad to the point where I couldn't walk on it. And then I remember like just being terrified because everybody I knew was doing research and they were Googling it and they're like, well, it's going to travel up to your lungs and you're going to die from it. And I was just getting like terrified. So I went back and made an appointment with the doctor who had prescribed me the NuvaRing just to kind of ask him, you know, what do I need to do? Obviously, I had discontinued using it. And his assistant came out, or his nurse or whoever came out into the waiting room while I was sitting there like bawling in pain. And she said, I'm sorry, I can't see you. You don't have health insurance now. And so I was just like absolutely destroyed. And so I ended up going to the emergency room and they did an ultrasound. But it hasn't affected me since then, since I have been off birth control. So I just choose to not be on birth control ever. And then come to find out my husband also has fertility issues. So it hasn't been an issue.
Right.
All that to say, I feel like blood clotting disorders are very common. And I feel like I'm also hearing a lot about women who are experiencing like hormonal or fertility issues in the more recent past as opposed to the past.
Right. Well, what I found was interesting is, of course, you know, when something happens to you, you do a lot of research on it. Google can be your friend and also be your enemy. I found that 1 in 4 pregnancies will be lost due to miscarriage or stillbirth.
Overall, 1 in 4 pregnancies.
In the United States, 1 in 4.
Wow.
And then 1 in 16 will result in stillbirth.
Oh my goodness.
And when I did a little bit further research, that blood clotting issues is a common cause of miscarriage and stillbirth. And that in the U.S., maternity care is very lacking compared to Europe. Basically, it boils down to the insurance companies think that the blood tests that they run for the blood clotting disorders is too expensive. Yes, and I didn't fully understand that until my OB was talking to me about it, because I found in Europe they test every mother for, you know, if it's her first pregnancy, her second, third, fourth, fifth, it doesn't matter. They still get tested for blood clotting disorders in the first trimester as part of the first trimester testing. Here in the United States, the insurance companies say it's too expensive.
So as a takeaway, if you've recently figured out or found out that you are a pregnant person, can you request to your doctor to have these tests done?
You have to have a prior history of issues.
Or they won't?
They won't, because when my OB explained it was, she said, I would love to do this testing on every single pregnant woman that comes through my office, because she said, I can prevent so much from happening. But she said, if I do and I don't have a good reason for it, I will get fined.
That is mind-blowing.
What's more mind-blowing is that after insurance, the insurance contract, the blood test costs $300.
Oh my goodness. I'm sure that's something that every mother is willing to pay or
Right.
wishes they could.
I would have paid that a million times over.
Right.
Just to have my little girl here.
Oh my goodness. That is absolutely crazy. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
I feel like it takes a lot of courage to talk about that, and especially with like essentially a stranger. I'm just mind blown.
It's taken me quite some time to get to this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, losing a child is not something you expect to happen, but it does happen.
Yeah. And according to the statistics, quite often.
Yes, it does. And any pregnant women that are listening, the one thing I can tell you is, yes, after the first trimester, the chances of something going wrong is very small. But I was 34 weeks. I was 3 weeks away from being induced.
And you had a healthy pregnancy the entire time.
Completely healthy pregnancy. I gained, I think it was like 35 pounds. I look rather large, but I have a lot of extra skin where I lost a whole bunch of weight quite a few years ago. So my OB, she was not concerned about my weight, my history, nothing.
Wow. And just completely out of the blue.
Yeah, I passed the gestational diabetes test twice. First time was at 24 weeks and again at 28 weeks. I never had preeclampsia. She wasn't even worried about that. I was perfectly healthy.
Wow. So going forward, did your medical team recommend that you start like some sort of birth control, or what did they recommend going forward? Medication?
Because I do have the blood clotting disorders, I will never be on birth control again because the occurrence of blood clots is higher when you're on birth control.
Yep.
So I will never be on birth control ever again. I'm on an adult aspirin now just because first they said baby aspirin and then they said, no, we should probably do an adult aspirin because you do have, 4, not just, one. And so I do an adult aspirin. Having a stroke or heart attack is not something I look forward to in, my late 30s, early 40s. And when I become pregnant again, we will be on a blood thinner.
Are you trying?
Not yet. I want to do some more stuff health-wise.
Yeah.
Just, because it was out of the blue last time. This time I can plan for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to try again.
That's
I think we're going to
awesome.
be using a sperm donor this time just so we can make sure it happens and it doesn't take 20 years.
That's amazing. Well, I'm definitely rooting for you. I really want to be one of your calls when you find out that you're pregnant.
Yeah, I'm going to be posting it everywhere.
Also, I'm offering to babysit. Just
Okay.
throwing it out there.
I'll take you up on that offer.
Deal. Well, cool. That is amazing. So after all of that, you decided that you would like to become a foster parent.
Yes.
How did that happen?
I had thought about it for years, just because, I was adopted myself and, I didn't have my parents growing up. And so I felt like I could help a lot of children and make them feel wanted because that was the one thing growing up that I always felt like I was a burden to people because, they weren't my parents. Where are my parents? Why aren't my parents taking care of me? And I always said, hey, this is what I want to do with my life. I want to help children. And I asked my husband, I said, hey, what do you think about being foster parents? And he's like, well, let's do it. And I said, are you sure? Because, this is some of the situations we're going to be running into. He's like, yeah, find out how we do it. And I said, okay.
That's awesome. So where are you in that process?
We had just completed our last home visit 2 weeks ago, and people have reached out to me about the references that the home study writer is sending. So I'm hoping that is going to be finalized in a couple of weeks.
So you've basically done everything that you need to do, and you're just waiting on them.
Yep.
Oh my
waiting on her
gosh.
to submit it to DCS and see if DCS comes back with anything.
Was there anything about like the training process or the home study process that you found like interesting or surprising?
Not really. The training, they changed the foster parent training from PATH to 10 Key. And the 10 Key training, it's not as I say invasive. We were told that the homework was like 4 or 5 hours a week.
Whoa.
And I was like, oh, that's a little much.
That's a lot. Was
Yeah.
it?
No. With the 10 Key, it was only maybe an hour. I think the most was like 2 hours, but we had like 10 situations we had to analyze and write about.
So they were just trying to like scare you away and see who was strong enough to stick with it.
That informational meeting, I thought was going to scare my husband. I knew what I was getting into because I knew that a lot of these children were going through hell and back.
Yeah.
And yeah, that informational meeting, I think they intentionally try to scare you because they tell you exactly what you're going to be doing and how difficult it is. And if you're not prepared to do it, don't come back.
Wow. So do you have a certain like age group or gender or anything in mind when it comes to placement or like a sibling set, individual child?
We told them that we would take sibling groups. I obviously am a big advocate for keeping siblings together. And we said we take any age.
Okay. Cool.
0 to 17, 18.
So I know the need for teenagers is the highest right now. So most likely your first call will be for teenagers, which at this point I have 2 infants right now, and I would love to bring in a teenager. If I could take another child into my house right now, if I had the ability to, I would love to have a teenager in my house because it would be so refreshing to be able to help a child who doesn't need, most likely, their diaper change, and who I could say, hey, could you please hand me a diaper? And they would be able to. It would be very refreshing.
Right. I mean, I'm looking forward to the older children. I mean, don't get me wrong, babies are sweet. Toddlers are pretty much hell on earth.
Yes.
So, I mean, we're set up for, newborn. We have a 3-in-1 crib. We have clothes, diapers, wipes, the whole 9 yards. But I would love to have an older child just because there's so much more you can do with them. And to me, infants and toddlers, they're affected by the situation, but not nearly as much as an older child because they remember everything they've went through.
Yep.
And those, I feel like, we've watched my niece and nephew, and they're older. They're, how old? I forget. They're about between 7 and 11 years old.
All right.
And they were absolutely wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And I told my husband, I said, I hope we get older children.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, congratulations on
thank you.
Getting it all completed and just awaiting the final approval. I'm stoked for you.
Yeah, it was very intrusive, though. Some of those questions that they ask you, I'm like, wow, you really want to know that?
Oh, yeah. Like
that's real personal.
I remember when she was doing our phone interview, she would be like, well, tell me about your last failed relationship. And I'm like, what? Why? I'm married.
Right.
Do you remember like some of the invasive questions?
The one question she asked me was, what was it like the first time you had sex and how did it affect you?
I don't remember getting that question.
I was like, do I really have to answer that?
How does that help them?
I have no idea.
Wow.
Yeah, I remember that was, it's in the questionnaire. And she did ask me that in my personal interview. And I was like, it didn't affect me.
I would have remembered that question, and I don't think things must have changed a little bit.
Yeah, because in the foster training classes, they gave us a binder, which they would give out to everybody. None of those forms are relevant anymore.
Oh, gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy, crazy. So at this point, I have some questions for you, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right. As an adopted child, what advice would you give to adoptive parents? And this is specifically helpful for me.
If given the chance, ask the biological parents to write a letter to their child, take a picture with them or have pictures of them to give the child. And you may not be comfortable with it, but if they want to find them, they need that to complete their life. It's not that they don't love you, but they need to know that for themselves.
I love that. That makes me want to reach out to my son's biological mother and ask her if she'll like be able to get together and take photos. And I'm sure she would love to. She'd be willing to and write him a letter. I'm sure she would do that.
Yeah, because that was one of the biggest questions I had growing up was why? Why did they not want me?
Yeah.
And I feel that, if the biological parent will take the time and just write a letter as to why they gave up their rights, that would help the child out a lot.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Oh, and medical history. Medical history is a big, 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 big thing.
So I don't know if this applied to your situation, but in ours, the biological mother was required to fill out a medical history questionnaire, and it was probably 10 pages long, and it asked about all of these different conditions for many members of their immediate family. Did that not happen?
No. I didn't know anything about my biological mother until I met her.
Okay. Interesting. So, as a mother who's experienced the loss of pregnancy, what advice would you give mothers that are currently grieving the same loss?
Life does get better. Whatever you're feeling now is completely valid. Don't let anybody belittle your feelings or tell you that you just need to get over it, because you will move on in your own time. I highly recommend therapy, especially somebody who specializes in grief. We just finished our grief counseling probably a month ago, and we started in, I believe it was September. Yeah, it was right around the time I went back to work. And we were going every single week. And if you put in the work, you're going to get a reward out of it.
I totally agree with that, especially, the therapy thing I feel like could be beneficial to literally every person. Everybody is going through something or will go through something traumatic in their life, or maybe they already have. I think therapy can benefit everybody.
One thing I learned is that we don't know what empathy means, and we can give sympathy, but unless you've been there, don't try to say, I've been where you've been, I know how you feel, because you really don't. And I mean that in the kindest way possible. I was told, oh, well, you could still try again. You're not at that age yet. Well, there must have been something wrong. God meant for this to happen. The best that you can do is just be there. You can say, I'm sorry, but unless you've experienced the loss of a child, you're not going to have any idea what that person is feeling.
Okay. Yeah, that's good advice. And especially after the statistics that you brought up about how often this does happen, it's really important for, I feel like, people to know the best ways that they can support others. So thank you for that. Now on to some fun questions. If you could squirt one liquid out of your finger for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Fruit juice.
Okay. So is this for yourself, or is like your husband a big fan? Or
I love fruit, so it would just be awesome to be able to have that.
Any particular type?
No, I love all fruit.
So like, what if you could do a different fruit juice out of each finger?
Oh, that would get interesting. It'd be like pineapple and orange and cherry.
All right, I'm on board. I like that. Cool. Would you rather have feet for hands or nonstop sticky fingers, and why?
The always sticky fingers?
Yes, everything you touched would like stick.
Because I hate feet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't stand it.
So you don't want 4 of them?
No, I can't stand to touch my own feet, let alone somebody else doing it. So no, I can't do it.
Okay, but here's my problem with that. Like, even imagine if you're grabbing like toilet paper. How would you get it off if both of your hands had sticky fingers?
I'd figure it out.
You have to. It's a lose-lose situation for that one.
They make bidets for that.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
You would just get a bidet in each of your toilets.
Yeah.
All right. Would you rather be required to start every single sentence with, hey, jerk, or required to end every single sentence with, haha, I was just kidding, and why?
Haha, I'm just kidding, because you shouldn't be calling people names to start off a sentence.
That's very kind of you. So literally every sentence you're going to end with, haha, I was just kidding. And people will think you're joking about everything you say.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people take me too seriously, I think, because I'm very sarcastic and I can say it with a straight face. And I always have to say, I'm just kidding.
So you already do this then.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be any different.
All right, cool. So are there any extra thoughts that you'd like to add? Anything that you'd like to share with our listeners before we wrap up?
No. If you're thinking about fostering or adopting, please do. There are so many children. AdoptUSKids.org, I believe it is.
Yep.
I know in the state of Tennessee, the last time I checked, they had 11 pages of children that needed adoption.
Whoa.
Yeah, these are children that are in the state's care, that the parental rights have already been taken. They're just waiting for somebody to adopt them. I know there was a sibling group on there. They had been on there for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and it just broke my heart because they said, we just want a family.
Yeah. Yeah, please do that. Please visit adoptuskids.org. And if you're able, if you have the ability to open your home to foster care or to open your home to an adopted child, please consider it.
Yes. There's so many children out there that need a home, and whether it be foster, which is just temporary, sometimes that turns into a permanent situation where the parental rights gets taken, so they're available for adoption, or the parental rights have already been taken and they're just sitting out there wanting somebody to love them.
Absolutely. Well, before we close out, I do need to talk a little bit about our first giveaway. So on March 31st, a winner will be chosen to receive a Rocketbook Wave. So if you're not familiar with that, this is the eco-friendly reusable notebook that is great for people like me who prefer to take notes using an actual pen and paper. So what you do is you jot down your words or your sketches, you scan them into the Rocketbook app, which allows you to organize your entries on multiple platforms, Outlook, Evernote, Google Drive, whatever you use. And then to erase the page, you microwave the notebook. And just like that, it's brand new again. Entering the contest is super easy. It's just 2 steps. First, leave a written review on the Purple Apple Podcast app. Then go to the Barely Braided Instagram page, which is at Barely Braided Podcast. On the story highlight titled Giveaway, reply with the username that you used on Apple. That's it. 2 steps. A winner will be chosen live on our Instagram page on Tuesday, March 31st. And if you would like to accompany your review with a big fat 5 stars, that would be great as well. I would absolutely love you forever and ever and ever and ever. Big thanks again to the Russell in Nashville for letting us use this beautiful space. Visit www.russellnashville.com to book your stay. And also thanks to Ruben Andrews, who is this week's podcast editor. Most importantly, thank you to Barbara, our guest. Barbara, if anybody listening has questions for you or would like to reach out to you, how would you prefer they do that?
They can reach me by email, catlover1982@gmail.com, and it's all spelled out, no fancy letters or anything. And my Facebook user is catlover1982 also.
I love that. I'm assuming you love cats. Do you have cats?
Yes, we have 2 black kitties. And they just turned a year old this month. And then we also have 3 dogs.
Oh, you have all of the animals.
Yes. We have a little zoo.
That's amazing. Well, again, thank you so much. I can't imagine how much courage this takes to kind of tell your story and really be vulnerable. So I cannot tell you how much I appreciate this. And I'm sure the listeners will as well. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, have a great week, and we will see you next time.